Grand risings, people. It's your boy, WiseDuality, aka JoBar, Eliezer, Qandu. God adds to the one who encourages, and I can do anything because my Father is with me. Well, I said I was going to read the Book of Wisdom. The Wisdom of Solomon has different names, and said I was going to read this guy for you. I was going to read this for you guys. It's out of the Apocrypha. It's 14 additional books that are added to the original Bible. You can find it in most Catholic Bibles, those 14 books. And this is the Good News translation. I don't really like reading King James. I only use it as a reference. Matter of fact, I am not going to read it out of this book because the text is so small. I will read it out of off my laptop so I can have some bigger print. I don't have to be squinting because the text in there is so small. When you get older, your eyes start doing different things. Alright, where's this? Book of Solomon. Okay, what about the Book of Wisdom? It's not Baruch. Baruch is not Baruch. Even though I think that's still like the same. That's the same book. It's just by a different name. Let me see. No, that's not the one I'm looking for. Oh man, where can I find it? One second. How's it doing this? There you go. Wisdom. All right. See, on the website BibleGateway.com, it's under Wisdom. It's the Wisdom book. If you try to search for it, you have to switch the translation to the Good News translation. And then on the left-hand side, you'll see a Bible book list. That's the quickest way to get to it, because if you do Wisdom, if you search for Wisdom, it's just going to bring up everything that says Wisdom in it. So it's going to bring up other text. So use the book list to go to the book that you're looking for concerning Wisdom. It's the quickest way to get to it. Or any book, for real, because it has the listing of all the books under that particular translation. So that's the quick way to get to it. All right, the Book of Wisdom, the Good News translation, chapter 1. The search for justice. Love justice, you rulers of the world. Set your mind sincerely on the Lord and look for him with all honesty. Those who do not try to test him will find him. He will show himself to those who trust him. Dishonest thoughts separate people from God. And if you are foolish enough to test him, his power will put us to shame. Wisdom will never be a home with anyone who is deceitful or a slave to sin. Everyone who is holy has learned to stay away from deceitful people. He will not stay around when foolish thoughts are being expressed. He will not feel comfortable when injustice is done. God is aware of what we say. Verse 6. Wisdom is a spirit that is friendly to people, but she will not forgive anyone who speaks against God. For God knows our feelings and thoughts, and hears our every word. Since the Lord's Spirit fills the entire world and holds everything in it together, she knows every word that people say. No one who speaks wickedly will escape notice. Sooner or later, he will receive just punishment. The intentions of ungodly people will be closely examined. Their words will be reported to the Lord, and then they will get the punishment that their wickedness deserves. God will tolerate no challenge, and since he hears everything, you cannot hide your complaining from him. So be sure that you do not go around complaining. It does no good, and don't engage in bitter talk. The most secret things you say will have their consequences, and lying will destroy your soul. God did not create death. Ooh, that's a good one, ain't it? Verse 12. Do not bring on your own death by sinful actions. God did not invent death, and when living creatures die, it gives him no pleasure. He created everything so that it might continue to exist, and everything he created is wholesome and good. There is no deadly poison in them. No, death does not rule this world, for God's justice does not die. Ungodly people have brought death on themselves by the things they have said and done. They yearn for death as if it were a lover. They have gone into partnership with death, and it is just what they deserve. Chapter 2. Wicked thinking. Wicked people are wrong when they say to themselves, our life is short and full of sorrow, and when it ends comes. Our life is short and full of sorrow, and when its end comes, there is no escape. No one has ever been known to come back from the world of the dead. We were born by chance, and after life is over, we will be as if we had never been born at all. Our breath is no more than a puff of smoke. Our mind is nothing more than a spark thrown off by the beating of our heart. When the spark dies, our body will crumble into ashes, and our breath will become part of the empty air. In time, no one will remember anything we ever did, and even our names will be forgotten. Our lives will pass away like the traces of clouds and vanish like fog in the heat of the sun. Our time on earth is like a passing shadow. There is no escape from the day of our death. It is fixed, and no one can postpone it. The wicked say, come on. The wicked say, come on then. Let's enjoy the good things of life, and live in this world the way we did when we were young and free of care. Let's drink the most expensive wines and use the finest perfumes. Let's not miss a single flower in the springtime. Before the roses wither, let's pick them and wear them in our hair. Let's all join in and leave signs everywhere of our carefree revelry. Life owes us that much. We'll oppress the poor, even if they are righteous. We'll show no respect for the widows or old people. We'll call ourselves right if we are strong enough to get what we want. No one ever got anywhere by being weak. Righteous people are nothing but a nuisance. So let's look for chances to get rid of them. They are against what we do. They accuse us of breaking the law of Moses and violating the traditions of our ancestors. They are against what we do. They accuse us of breaking the law of Moses and violating the traditions of our ancestors. They claim to know God and they call themselves the Lord's children. We can't stand the sight of people like that. What they are contradicts our whole way of thinking. They are not like other people. They have strange ways. They think that our moral standards are so corrupt that everything we do should be avoided. The boast of having God for their father and believe that when all is said and done, only the righteous will be happy. But we'll see if that's true. Let's see what will happen when it's time for them to die. If the righteous really are God's children, God will save them from their enemies. So let's put them to the test. We'll be cruel to them and torment them, and we'll find out how calm and reasonable they are. We'll find out just how much they can stand. We'll condemn them to a shameful death. After all, they say that God will protect them. This is how evil people think, but they are wrong. They are blinded by their own wickedness. They have never known God's secrets, never hoped for the rewards of a holy and blameless life. When God created us, He did not intend for us to die. He made us like Himself. It was the devil's jealousy that brought death into the world, and those who belong to the devil are the ones who will die. It's a good one, right? I like this one. I gotta, yeah, there we go. I gotta increase the size of this text on here, man. I had to turn the font size up, man. That was too small. But yeah, everything that I've been saying in my shorts, on my thoughts of the day, and my music, posts that, from my thoughts that I put out there, my written thoughts, everything that I've been saying in these last two chapters, they've been saying. People blame God for this and blame God for that. And right here, it clearly says God is not the reason for all of these things. He didn't create this world to be the way that it is. The people in the world have made this world the way that it is. Corrupt, evil people. Children of the devil, that are not of God. It's creating these disasters, this pain, this suffering. Greedy people, money, hungry people. Before there was money, there still was greed. You know what I'm saying? So it's the spirit of greed. The destiny of the righteous, chapter 3. But righteous people are protected by God and will never suffer torment. It is a foolish mistake to think that righteous people die and that their death is a terrible evil. They leave us, but it is not a disaster. In fact, the righteous are at peace. It may appear they have suffered punishment, but they have the confident hope of immortality. Their sufferings were minor compared with the blessings they will receive. God has tested them like gold in a furnace and found them worthy to be with Him. They leave us, but it is not a disaster. In fact, the righteous are at peace. It might appear they have suffered punishment, but they have the confident hope of immortality.
Their sufferings were minor compared with the blessings they will receive. God has tested them like gold in a furnace and found them worthy to be with him. He has accepted them just as he accepts the sacrifices which his worshippers burn on the altar. When God comes to reward the righteous, they will blaze out against the wicked like fire and dry straw. They will blaze out against the wicked like fire and dry straw. They will rule over nations and peoples, and the Lord will be their king forever. Those who have put their trust in God will come to understand the truth of his ways. Those who have been faithful will live with him in his love, for he is kind and merciful to those ones whom he has chosen. I said it before, his will. The destiny of the wicked. Verse 10. The ungodly, however, will get the punishment their wicked thoughts deserve, because they rebel against the Lord and ignored what was right. A man who has no use for wisdom or education has a miserable life in store for him. He has nothing to hope for. His labors are useful. His labors are useless, and he will never accomplish anything worthwhile. The women he marries will turn out to be irresponsible, and his children will go wrong. All his descendants will be under a curse. The importance of virtue. Verse 14 or 13b. On Judgment Day, God will reward the woman who has never been able to have a child, provided she has not been guilty of adultery. Then she will be happy. On that day, even the man who has been castrated will be rewarded with happiness, if he has kept the law and has not stored up resentment against the Lord. Because he has been faithful, he will receive a special reward more precious than having children, a place in the Lord's heavenly temple. Honest deeds are like a tree that bears marvelous fruit. Wisdom is like a root that is alive and can always send up new shoots. Wisdom is like a root that is alive and can always send up new shoots. But children born of adultery or of a forbidden union will die an early death. Yet, even if they do live a long time, they will never amount to anything. They will not be respected in their old age. And if they die young, they will have no hope or comfort on Judgment Day. Children born of a forbidden union suffer a miserable fate. I'll keep on saying it. There's rules to this. You may not see it in our physical world and through the laws of the land, but through spiritual laws. Footnotes. Wisdom. Chapter 3, verse 9. Some manuscripts add, and he protects his own people. Wisdom. Verse 10. What was right or righteous people? Now see, everything they talk, the stuff that's happening in Israel, that's why I said they're not God's people, because God's people will pray to God and he will protect them. He will fight for them. And if these are God's people, this is something that they would know. This is something that they would stand on. This is something that they would believe. And they would not be committing the atrocities that they are. They will not be taking other people's land. They will not be oppressing other people. Israel was an example for the rest of the world, how God will protect them, how God will provide for them, how Yahweh would give them land, will take from other people and give it to them. These people that are in power in Israel are not the covenant Jews. And I'm going to say it today I die. They are not. They are European converts, whatever. They adapted this culture from the black people that were in Europe. And the United Nations, the United States, Russia, and Germany, even though they were fighting against Germany, but everything that Germany was doing, all the technology, all the disastrous destruction that they were planning, when those countries invaded and took over, and they didn't wipe them out. They partnered with them. That's why there were so many Germans in the United States from the war. Scientists, people that have knowledge of the evils that they were doing over there. And they placed people in power in Israel and this nation that they created. If Israel has been a nation for thousands of years, why is it that they're recognized as a nation in 1945? Why? If they've been a nation, how do these people come over and say, now you are a nation now? We're a nation now. Starting today. Starting this year and this time. But these are people that have been written about for hundreds of years, thousands of years. Wake up. The delusions, the lies that people believe, and their lie is being exposed. And by their own behaviors, actions, their own words and testimony. And they are on display. Their lies, their corruption, their wickedness, their true affiliations are being exposed. Chapter 4. It is better to have virtue, even if it means having no children. Your virtue will be recognized by other people and by God, and you will be remembered for it forever. Virtue provides an example for people to follow. When it is not there, they miss it. It has always been the finest prize a person can win, and it always will be so. It is the noblest of all the good qualities a person can have. No matter how many children are born of a forbidden union, none of them will ever amount to anything. They are illegitimate. They can never lay a firm foundation for themselves, never take deep root. Like trees with shallow roots, they put out leaves for a while, but they sway in the wind, and storms uproot them. Their branches snap off before they mature. Their fruit never ripens, and it is good for nothing. Their fruit never ripens, and it is good for nothing. On Judgment Day, children born of a forbidden union will testify to the sin of their parents and acts as witnesses against them. Righteous people, however, will find rest, even if they die young. We honor old age, but not just because a person has lived a long time. Wisdom and righteousness are signs of the maturity that should come with old age. The example of Enoch. Verse 10. Once there was a man named Enoch who pleased God, and God loved him. While Enoch was still living among sinners, God took him away, so that evil and falsehood could not corrupt his mind and soul. We all know that people can be fascinated by evil, that they cannot recognize what is good even when they are looking right at it. Innocent people can be so corrupted with desire that they can think of nothing but what they want. This man Enoch achieved in a few years time a perfection that other people could never obtain in a complete lifetime. The Lord was pleased with Enoch's life and quickly took him out of this wicked world. People were aware of his departure, but didn't understand. They never seemed to learn the lesson that God is kind and merciful to his own people. He protects those whom he has chosen. It just further prove my point, though, that they're not the chosen people. The fate of the wicked. Verse 16. Even when righteous people are dead and gone, they put to shame the wicked people who live on after them. In their old age, the wicked will be disgraced by young people who have already achieved perfection. The wise may die young, but the wicked will never understand that it is the Lord's way of taking them off to safety. They make light of a wise person's death, but the Lord will soon be laughing at them. When they die, they will not be given an honorable burial. Even the dead will hold them in scorn and disgust forever. God will throw them to the ground and make them speechless. Like buildings shaken from their foundations, they will be reduced to piles of ruins. They will be in torment. People will soon forget all about them. They will come in fear to the judgment, where their sins will be counted. They will stand condemned by their own lawless actions. Chapter 5. The regrets of the wicked. On that day, someone righteous, full of confidence, will stand before those who oppressed him and made light of his labors. They will be amazed to see him safe and will tremble with terrible fear. Then they will regret what they did, and groaning in anguish, they will say to each other, This is the one we made fun of. We thought he was a joke. What fools we were. We thought he was crazy to live the way he did. And when he died, we didn't honor him. And now, here he is, one of God's own children, with a place of his own among God's people. We were the ones who wandered off the right road. We never lived in the light of righteousness. We never caught the first glimmer of its light. All our lives we wandered across unmarked deserts, instead of following the road which the Lord wanted us to travel. And this lawlessness led us to ruin. We were so proud of ourselves. We bragged about how rich we were. And now, what good has it done us? All those things are gone now. They have disappeared like a shadow, like something you hear and then forget. A ship sails across the waves of the ocean, but when it's gone, it leaves no trace. You cannot tell it was ever there. The birds fly through the air, but leaves no sign that it has been there. It speeds along, riding through the thin air by the force of its wings, leaving behind no trace of its passing. An arrow splits the air when it is shot at a target, but at once the air closes up behind it, and no one can tell where it passed. It is the same with us. We were born, and then we ceased to be. We left no sign of virtue behind us. We were destroyed by our wickedness. What hope do wicked people have? Only the hope that straw blown about in the wind, the hope of ocean foam that disappears in the storm, the hope of smoke in the breeze. Their hope lasts no longer than our memory of a guest who stays one day and leaves the next. But the righteous live on forever. The Lord will reward them. The Most High will protect them. He will give them royal splendor and a magnificent crown. He will shield them with his powerful arm. He will go out into battle, determined to defeat his enemies and use the creation itself as a weapon. Righteousness will be his armor. Genuine justice will be his helmet. Holiness will be his invincible shield. He will sharpen his stern anger into a sword, and the forces of nature will join him in battle against those who are foolish enough to oppose him. Bolts of lightning will strike right on target, as if the Lord had made a bow out of the clouds and was shooting arrows. Hailstorms will beat down on his enemies with terrible force. The oceans and the rivers will come rushing over them in devastating flood. Great windstorms will blow them away like straw. Lawlessness will be the ruin of the whole world. Evil actions will cause governments to fall. Footnotes. Wisdom, chapter 5, verse 14. Ocean foam. Some manuscripts have frost. Chapter 6. The responsibilities of rulers. So then, you kings, you rulers the world over. So then, you kings, you rulers the world over, listen to what I say and learn from it. You govern many lands and are proud that so many people are under your rule. But this authority has been given to you by the Lord Most High. He will examine what you have done and what you plan to do. You rule on behalf of God and his kingdom. And if you do not govern justly, if you do not uphold the law, if you do not live according to God's will, you will suffer sudden and terrible punishment. Judgment is especially severe on those in power. Common people may be mercifully forgiven for their wrongs, but those in power will face a severe judgment. The Lord of all is not afraid of anyone, no matter how great they are. He himself made everyone, great and common alike, and he provides for all equally, but he will judge the conduct of rulers more strictly. It is for you, mighty kings, that I write these words, so that you may know how to act wisely and avoid mistakes. These are holy matters, and if you treat them in a holy manner, you yourselves will be considered holy. If you have learned this lesson, you will be able to defend yourselves at the judgment. So then, make my teaching your treasure and joy, and you will be well instructed. The value of wisdom. Verse 12. Wisdom shines bright and never grows dim. Those who love her and look for her can easily find her. She is quick to make herself known to anyone who desires her. Get up early in the morning to find her, and you will have no problem. You will find her sitting at your door. To fasten your attention on wisdom is to gain perfect understanding. If you look for her, you will soon find peace of mind, because she will be looking for those who are worthy of her, and she will find you where you are. She is kind and will be with you in your every thought. Wisdom begins when you sincerely want to learn. To desire wisdom is to love her. To love her is to keep her laws. To keep her laws is to be certain of immortality. Immortality will bring you close to God. This desire for wisdom can prepare you to rule a kingdom. So then, you that rule the nations, if you value your thrones and symbols of authority, honor wisdom so that you may rule forever. Solomon wishes to share his wisdom. Verse 22. I will tell you that wisdom is and how she came to be. I will not keep anything secret. I will trace her history from the beginning and make knowledge of her open to all. I will not ignore any part of the truth. No jealous desire to guard my own knowledge will make me hold back anything. Wisdom has nothing in common with such an attitude. No, indeed, the more wise people, no, indeed, the more wise people there are, the safer the world will be. A sensible king can be depended on to give his people this kind of security. So then, learn what I am about to teach you, and you will profit from it. Chapter 7. A king is like everyone else. Like every human being, I am mortal. I am a descendant of the first man who was made from the soil. I was conceived from the sperm of a man in the pleasure of intercourse. For 9 months my flesh took shape in the blood of my mother's womb. When I was born, I came into the world like anyone else. I began to breathe the same air we all breathe. And like everyone else, the first sound I made was a cry. I was wrapped in clothes and cared for. I was wrapped in clothes and cared for. No king ever began life differently. For all of us, there is one way into life, and there is only one way out. Solomon declares his love for wisdom. Verse 7. Realizing that I was only human, I prayed and was given understanding. The spirit of wisdom came to me. I regarded her more highly than any throne or crown. Wealth was nothing compared to her. Precious jewels could not equal her worth. Besides, wisdom, all the gold in the world is a handful of sand, and silver is nothing more than clay. I value her more than health and good looks. Hers is a brightness that never grows dim, and I preferred it to any other light. When wisdom came to me, all good things came with her. She brought me untold riches. I was happy with them all, because wisdom has brought them to me. I had not realized before that she was the source of that she was the source of all these things. I had not realized before that she was the source of all these things. I was sincere in learning from her, and now I am glad to share what I learned. No one can ever exhaust the treasures of wisdom. Use those treasures, and you are God's friends. He approves of what you learn from her. I pray to God that my thoughts may be worthy of what I have learned, and that I may speak according to his will. He is wisdom's guide. He gives correction to those who are wise. We are under his power and authority. We ourselves, our words, all our understanding and skills. It is he who gave me true knowledge of the forces of nature, what the world is made of, how the elements behave, how the calendar is determined by the movements of the sun, the changing seasons, the constellations, and the cycles of years. He has taught me about the nature of living creatures, the behavior of wild animals, the forces of the winds, the reasoning powers of human beings, the different kinds of plants, and the use of their roots as medicine. I learned things that were well known and things that had never been known before, because wisdom, who gave shape to everything that exists, was my teacher. The nature of wisdom. The spirit of wisdom is intelligent and holy. It is of one nature, but reveals itself in many ways. It is not made of any material substance. It moves about freely. It is clear, clean, and confident. It cannot be harmed. It loves what is good. It is sharp and unconquerable, kind, and a friend of humanity. It is dependable and sure. It has no worries. It has power over everything and sees everything. It penetrates every spirit that is intelligent and pure, no matter how delicate its substance may be. It penetrates every spirit that is intelligent and pure, no matter how delicate its substance may be. Wisdom moves more easily than motion itself. She is so pure that she penetrates everything. She is a breath of God's power, a pure and radiant stream of glory from the Almighty. Nothing that is defiled can ever steal its way into wisdom. She is a reflection of eternal light, a perfect mirror of God's activity and goodness. Even though wisdom acts alone, she can do anything. She makes everything new, although she herself never changes. From generation to generation, she enters the souls of holy people and makes them God's friend and prophets. There is nothing that God loves more than people who are at home with wisdom. Wisdom is more beautiful than the sun and all the constellations. She is better than light itself, because night always follows day, but evil never overcomes wisdom. Footnotes. Verse 22 cannot be harmed or does no harm. Chapter 8. Her great powers reaches into every part of the world, and she sets everything in useful order. Solomon's love for wisdom. Verse 2. Wisdom has been my love. I courted her when I was young and wanted to make her my bride. I fell in love with her beauty. She glorifies her noble origin by living with God, the Lord of all, who loves her. She is familiar with God's mysteries and helps determine his course of action. It is good to have riches in this life. Nothing can make you richer than wisdom, who makes everything function. Is knowledge a useful thing to have? Nothing is better than wisdom. Who has given shape to everything that exists? Do you love justice? All the virtues are the results of wisdom's work. Justice and courage, self-control and understanding. Life can offer us nothing more valuable than these. Do you want to have wide experience? Wisdom knows the lessons of history and can anticipate the future. She knows how to interpret what people say and how to solve problems. She knows the miracles that God will perform and how the movements of history will develop. So I decided to take wisdom home to live with me, because I knew that she would give me good advice and encourage me in times of trouble and grief. I thought to myself, because of her, I will be honored wherever people come together. The old men will respect me even though I am young. They will find that my opinions show deep insight, and those in power will admire me. When I am silent, they will wait for me to speak, and when I speak, they will pay attention. Even when I speak at length, they will listen with concentration. Because of wisdom, I will gain immortality. I will live forever in the memory of those who come after me. I will hold power over nations and peoples. Dreaded tyrants will be seized with fear at the mention of my name. I will be famous as a good king and as a brave soldier. When I come home to wisdom, I will find contentment, because there is no conflict or pain in living with her, only happiness and joy. And so I thought it over. To be wedded to wisdom is to live forever. To love her is to be perfectly happy. To do her work is to be rich beyond measure. To share her company is to have sound judgment. To converse with her is to be honored. Then I was determined to take wisdom as my bride. I had a pleasant personality even as a child. I had been fortunate enough to receive a good soul, or rather, I was given a sound body to live in, because I was already good. Still, I realized that I would never receive wisdom unless God gave her to me. and knowing that only God could give her to me was itself a sign of understanding. So I prayed, begging the Lord with all my heart. Chapter 9. Solomon prays for wisdom. God of my ancestors, merciful Lord, by your word you created everything. By your wisdom you made us human to rule all creation, to govern the world with holiness and righteousness, to administer justice with integrity. Give me the wisdom that sits beside your throne. Give me a place among your children. I am your slave, as my mother before me. I am only human. I am not strong, and my life will be short. I have little understanding of the law or of how to apply it. Even if someone is perfect, he will be thought of as nothing without the wisdom that comes from you. You chose me over everyone else to be the king of your own people, to judge your sons and daughters. You told me to build a temple on your sacred mountain, an altar in Jerusalem, the city you chose as your home. It is a copy of that temple in heaven, which you prepared at the beginning. Wisdom is with you and knows your actions. She was present when you made the world. She knows what pleases you, what is right, and in accordance with your commands. Send her from the holy heavens, down from your glorious throne, so that she may work at my side, and I may learn what pleases you. She knows and understands everything and will guide me intelligently in what I do. Her glory will protect me. Then I will judge your people fairly and be worthy of my Father's throne. My actions will be acceptable. Who can ever learn the will of God? Human reason is not adequate for this task, and our philosophies tend to mislead us because our mortal bodies weigh our souls down. The body is a temporary structure made of earth, a burden to the active mind. All we can do is make guesses about things on earth. We must struggle to learn about things that are close to us. Who then could ever hope to understand heavenly things? No one has ever learned your will unless you first gave him wisdom and sent your Holy Spirit down to him. In this way, people on earth have been set on the right path, have learned what pleases you, and have been kept safe by wisdom. Chapter 10. Wisdom protected Adam. Wisdom protected the father of the world, the first man that was ever formed. When he alone had been created, she saved him from his own sinful act and gave him the strength to master everything on earth. Cain abandoned wisdom, but there was an unrighteous man who abandoned wisdom. He destroyed her by killing his brother in a fit of anger. Wisdom protected Noah. Because of that sin, the earth was flooded, but wisdom saved it again. She guided a righteous man in his flimsy wooden boat. Wisdom helped Abraham. Once, when the nations were frustrated in their wicked plans, wisdom recognized a righteous man and kept him innocent in God's sight. She gave him strength to obey God's command in spite of his love for his son. Wisdom rescued Lot. Wisdom rescued a righteous man while ungodly people were dying. He escaped the flames that destroyed the 5 cities. You can still see the evidence of their wickedness. The land there is barren and smoking. The plants bear fruit that never ripen, and a pillar of salt stands as a monument to one who did not believe. The people of those cities ignored wisdom and could not tell right from wrong. Not only that, but the remains of their cities still remind us of the foolish way they lived, so that their failure can never be forgotten. But wisdom rescued her servants from the danger. Wisdom protected Job. A righteous man once had to escape from his brother's anger, and wisdom guided him in the right way. She showed him God's kingdom and allowed him to know about holy things. She made him prosperous and successful in his work. When others were greedy for what he had and wanted to take it away from him, wisdom stood by him and made him rich. She protected him from his enemies who were waiting for a chance to attack him. She gave him victory in a hard fight so that he might realize that nothing can make a person stronger than serving God. Wisdom rescued Joseph. Once a righteous man was sold into slavery, but wisdom did not abandon him. She kept him safe from sin. She went to prison with him and never left him until she had given him power over an empire and made him the ruler of people who had once oppressed him. So let it be known that a false accusation had been made against him, and she gave him eternal honor. Wisdom led the Israelites out of Egypt. Wisdom once rescued an innocent and holy people from a nation of oppressors. She entered the soul of one of God's servants and stood up to dreaded kings by performing miracles. She rewarded God's people for their hardships. She guided them along a miraculous journey. She gave them shade during the day and brilliant starlight at night. She led them through the deep waters of the Red Sea, but she drowned their enemies and washed their bodies up on the shore. And so the righteous looted the ungodly. They sang hymns to your holy name, O Lord. Together they praised you for defending them. Wisdom gave speech to those who could not speak. She even caused babies to speak clearly. Footnotes. Wisdom, chapter 10, verse 10. Holy things are angels. Verse 16, and or who. Chapter 11. Wisdom led the Israelites through the desert. Wisdom brought success to the people of Israel through a holy prophet. They traveled across a desert where no one lived and camped in places where no human beings had ever been. They stood up to their enemies and fought them off. When people grew thirsty, they called to you, Lord, and you gave them water flowing out of solid rock. The disasters that punished the Egyptians saved your people when they were in trouble. The punishment of the Egyptians, because those enemies decreed that the babies of your people should be killed. You stirred up the sources of their ever-flowing river and made it foul with blood. Because those enemies decreed that the babies of your people should be killed, you stirred up the sources of their ever-flowing river and made it foul with blood. But now, in the desert, you let your people go thirsty to give them a taste of how you have punished their enemies. And then, when they least expected it, you gave them plenty of water. When they were being tested, even though it was a merciful discipline, they learned how wicked people were tortured when you judged them in anger. You tested your people as parents test their children to warn them, but you judged their enemies like a stern king and condemned them. They suffered, whether they were near your people or far from them. Their sorrow was doubled. They groaned as they looked back on what had happened. When they learned that their punishment had been of benefit to your people, they realized that it was your work, Lord. The Egyptians had refused to have anything to do with that man who long before was a baby, had been thrown out and exposed. But as things worked out, they came to be amazed at him. The righteous never suffered a thirst like theirs. Their wickedness misled them into silly ideas, so that they worship snakes and other disgusting animals, creatures without any powers of reason. Because of this, you punish them with millions of such animals and taught them that punishment for sins takes the same form as the sin itself. Your almighty power, Lord, created the world out of material that had no form at all. You could easily have punished those people by sending an invasion of bears or savage lions. You could have created new and terrible animals that could breathe fire or roar, or send out clouds of smoke, or shoot out fearful sparks from their eyes. You could have made animals like these that would have not attacked those people to kill them, but could scare them to death just by looking at them. But this was not necessary. You could have pursued them with your justice or struck them dead at the slightest hint of your power. But you have chosen to measure, count, and weigh everything you do. God is powerful and merciful. Verse 21. You can show your great power at any time you wish, and no one can stand up against it. In your sight, the whole world is a grain of sand, barely heavy enough to tip a pair of scales, a drop of dew on the ground in the morning. You are powerful enough to do anything, but you are merciful to everyone. You overlook our sins and give us time to repent. You love everything that exists. You do not despise anything that you have made. If you had not liked it, you would have made it. If you had not liked it, you would not have made it in the first place. How could anything last if you don't want it to? How could it endure if you had not created it? You have allowed it all to exist, O Lord, because it is yours, and you love everything, and you love every living thing. You have allowed it all to exist, O Lord, because it is yours, and you love every living thing. Chapter 12. Your immortal spirit is in everything. Your immortal spirit is in every one of them, and so you gently correct those who sin against you. You remind them of what they are doing and warn them about it, so that they may abandon their evil ways and put their trust in you, Lord. The sins of the Canaanites. Verse 3. This music in the background is distracting me. You hated the people who lived in your holy land long ago because they did terrible things. They practiced magic and conducted unholy worship. They killed children without mercy and ate the flesh and blood of human beings. They were initiated into secret rituals in which parents murdered their own defenseless children. It was your will for our ancestors to destroy these people, so that the land which you considered the most precious of all lands will be a suitable home for your people. But even in this, you show mercy toward their enemies. Since they were only human beings, you sent hornets ahead of your army to destroy the enemy gradually. You could have allowed the righteous to destroy these ungodly people in battle. You could have wiped them out immediately with wild animals or with one harsh command. But instead, you carried out your sentence gradually to give them a chance to repent, even though you knew that they came from evil stock, that they had been wicked since birth, and that they would never change their way of thinking. Their whole nation was cursed from the start, And though you had not punished them for their sins, it was not because you were afraid of anyone. God is sovereign. Verse 12. You created these wicked people, and no one can speak in their defense or condemn you for destroying them. No one can question what you have done or challenge your judgments. All things are under your care, and there is no other God to whom you must justify your decisions. No king or ruler on earth can accuse you of punishing those people unfairly. You are righteous and you rule everything righteously. You have never used your power to condemn a person who does not deserve to be punished. Your strength is the source of justice. You can show mercy to anyone. You can show mercy to everyone because you are the Lord of all. You show your strength when people doubt that your power is perfect, and you punish anyone who knows your power but dares to ignore it. Even though you have absolute power, you are a merciful judge. You could take action against us whenever you like, but instead you rule us with great patience. By the things you have done, you have taught your people that a person who is righteous must also be kind. You have given your people abundant hope by allowing them to repent of their sins. You were very careful and patient in punishing your people's enemies, even when they deserved to die. You gave them every opportunity to give up their sinful ways. But you judge your own people very strictly, even though you had made covenants with their ancestors and had solemnly promised to give them good things. Yes, you punish. Yes, you punish us, but you punish our enemies 10,000 times more, so that when we judge ourselves, we may remember your goodness, and when we are being judged, we may look for mercy. The punishment of the Egyptians. Verse 22. And so you tormented those who were foolish enough to live wickedly. You tormented them with the horrible things they worship. They had wandered far off from the truth and worshipped the most disgusting and horrible animals. They were deceived as easily as little children, and so you punished them for their stupidity, and your judgment made them look like fools. It was a light punishment, but those who pay no attention to such warnings deserve to feel the full weight of God's judgment. When they were punished with those creatures they considered gods, they became bitterly disillusioned and recognized that the true God was the one they had always refused to acknowledge. That is why they suffered the final punishment. Footnotes. Wisdom, chapter 12, verse 5. They were rituals. Greek unclear. It always boggled my mind how everybody says want to recognize with Egypt and the Egyptians and we're kings and this and that. They weren't the only nation. They weren't the only civilization of knowledge. You know what I'm saying? And the Egyptians learned it from someone else. There were people before the Egyptians that they learned from. What? Weren't it the Sumerians? The people that created Sanskrit were before the Egyptians, before hieroglyphics. So it just boggles my mind how everybody want to say Kemet and Egypt and all of this when Egypt is your direct oppressor, your direct enemy. Were some things in Egypt of God? Sure. But for the most part, no. They were idolatrous people. So everybody want to align and recognize with Egypt. Why? You're better off recognizing and aligning with Ethiopia. Chapter 13. The foolishness of nature worship. The foolishness of nature worship. Worshiping the created things and not the creator. Anyone who does not know God is simply foolish. Such people look at the good things around them and still fail to see the living God. They have studied the things he made, but they have not recognized the one who made them. I just said that. Excuse me. Instead, they suppose that the gods who rule the world are fire or wind or storm or the circling stars or rushing water or the heavenly bodies. People were so delighted when the beauty of these things. People were so delighted with the beauty of these things that they thought they must be gods. But they should have realized that these things have a master and that he is much greater than all of them. For he is the creator of beauty and he created them. Since people are amazed at the power of these things and how they behave, they ought to learn from them that their maker is far more powerful. When we realize how vast and beautiful the creation is, we are learning about the creator at the same time. But maybe we are too harsh with these people after all. They may have really wanted to find God, but couldn't. Surrounded by God works. They keep on looking at them. Surrounded by God works. They keep on looking at them until they are finally convinced that because the things they see are so beautiful, they must be gods. But still, these people really have no excuse. If they had enough intelligence to speculate about the nature of the universe, why did they not find the Lord of all things? It just boggles my mind. Why worship the creation and not the creator? The foolishness of idolatry. Verse 10. But the most miserable people of all are those who rest their hopes on lifeless things, who worship things that have been made by human hands, images of animals artistically made from gold or silver or some useless stone carved by someone years ago. A skilled woodworker may saw down some suitable tree, carefully strip off the bark, and then, with skillful craftsmanship, make from it an object that will serve some useful purpose. He will take the leftover pieces and use them as firewood to cook a meal that he can sit down to and enjoy. But among that scrap wood, he may take one piece that isn't good for anything. Maybe it's cooked and full of knots. Maybe it's crooked and full of knots, and carefully carved it in his leisure time, using spare moments to shape it into the crude image of a person, or maybe of some worthless animal. He paints it all over with red, covering up every flaw in the work. Then he prepares a suitable place in the wall for it and fastens it in place with iron nails. He is careful to keep it from falling because he knows it is only an idol and needs help. It cannot help itself. But he is not ashamed to pray to this lifeless thing about his marriage, his children, and his possessions. It is weak, but he prays to it for health. It is dead, but he prays to it for life. It has no experience, but he prays to it for help. It cannot walk, but he prays to it for successful journey. Its hands have no power, but he asks it to help him in business and making money and in his work. Useless things. Chapter 14. Wooden idols compared with Noah's wooden boat. In the same way, A man getting ready to sail on the raging sea will call for help from a piece of wood that is not as strong as the ship he is about to board. Someone designed the ship out of a desire for profit, and a craftsman built it with skill. But it is your care, O Father, that steers it. You give it a safe path through the waves of the sea. People may go to sea even if they have no skill, because you can save them from any danger. It is your will that the things you have made by your wisdom should be put to use. And so people can cross the sea in a boat and come safely to land because they trust their lives to that small piece of wood. This was how it was in ancient times when a proud race of giants was dying away. The hope of the world escaped on such a boat under your guidance and left the world a new generation to carry on the human race. A blessing was on Noah's wooden boat that allowed righteousness to survive, but a curse is on an idol made by human hands. A curse is also on the one who makes it, because he works on this perishable thing and then calls it a god. Ungodly people and these ungodly things they make are equally hated by God, who will punish both the things made and the people who made them. And so God's judgment will fall on pagan idols, because even though they are made from something God created, they became horrible things that trap the souls of foolish people. The origins of idolatry. Verse 12. Sexual immorality began when idols were invented. Sexual immorality began when idols were invented. They have corrupted human life ever since they were first made. Idols have not always existed, nor will they exist forever. It was human pride that brought them into the world, and that is why a quick end has been planned for them. Once there was a father who was overwhelmed with grief at the untimely death of his child, so he made an image of that child who had been suddenly taken from him. He then honored a dead human being as a god and handed on secret rituals and ceremonies to those who were under his authority. As time went on, this ungodly custom became stronger. Finally, it became law, and idols were being worshipped at the command of powerful rulers. When people lived too far away to honor a ruler in his presence, but were eager to pay honor to his absent king, they would imagine what he must look like and would then make a likeness of him. The ambitious artists who made these likenesses caused this worship to spread, even among people who did not know the king. An artist might want to please some ruler, and so he would use his skill to make the likeness better looking than the actual person. Then people would be so attracted by the work of art that the one whom they had earlier honored now became the object of their worship. So all this became a deadly trap, because people were grieving or under royal authority would take objects of stone or wood and give them the honor reserved for the one God. I've been saying this for a long time. And all this idolatry is about death. holding on to memories of a person's past. Holding on to them, they're gone. and you're trying to keep a memory alive, and then you turn that into worship, and they're your God, and you're praying to them, and you're missing them, and you're crying to them, and you're calling on them, but you ain't calling on God. Like they can save you, like they can help you. It's ridiculous. I know too many people that's stuck in that grief pattern, and they, they pray to the person and they don't pray to God. They call on help from the person and not from God. It's like that ancestor thing, It's something different. It's something different. But it's similar. The results of idolatry. One thing, verse 22, one thing led to another. It was not enough to be wrong about the knowledge of God. They lived in a state of evil warfare, but they were so ignorant that they called it peace. They murdered children in their initiations. They murdered children in their initiation rituals, celebrated secret mysteries, and held wild ceremonial orgies with unnatural practices. They no longer kept their lives or their marriages pure. A man might kill another by an act of treachery or cause him grief by committing adultery with his wife. Everything that was complete riot of bloody murder, robbery, deceit, corruption, faithlessness, disorder, falsehood, harassment of innocent people, ingratitude, moral decay, sexual perversion, broken marriages, adultery, and immorality. The worship of idols whose names should never be spoken is the beginning and the end, that cause and the result of every evil. People who worship them lose control of themselves in ecstasy, or pass off lies as prophecies, or live wickedly, or break their word without hesitation. They tell lies under oath and expect no punishment, because the idols they put their trust in are worthless. Both punishment will finally catch up with them. For two reasons. First, they were in error about God when they worship idols. And second, they had so little regard for holiness that they made false statements to deceive people. When unrighteous people commit sin, they will be hunted down, but by the power of whatever thing they swear by, but by the punishment, not by the power of whatever thing they swear by, but by the punishment that sinners deserve. When unrighteous people commit sin, they will be hunted down, not by the power of whatever thing they swear by, but by the punishment that sinners deserve. The true God gives immortality. Chapter 15. But God, our God, are kind and true and patient. You rule the universe with mercy. Even if we sin, we know your power and are still yours. But because we know that we belong to you, we will not sin. Knowing you is perfect righteousness. Recognizing your power is where immortality begins. We have not been misled by any evil product of human skill, by any useless object painted by some artist, or by some idol smeared with different colors. The sight of such things arouses the passions of foolish people and makes them desire a dead, lifeless image. Anyone who makes such a thing, or desires it, or worships it, is in love with something evil and gets what he deserves when he places his hopes in it. Not one hope, but all his hopes in it, huh? The foolishness of worshiping clay idols. Verse 7. A potter works the soft clay and carefully shapes each object for our use. Some things he makes are put to good use, and some are not, but he makes them all from the same clay and shapes them in the same manner. The potter himself decides which objects should be used for what purposes. He is a human being who was himself formed from earth only a short while earlier. And after a little while, when he must return the soul that was lent to him, he will go back to the same earth. He is a human being, but he wastes his labor shaping a useless god out of the same clay that he uses to make pots. His life will be short, and he will soon have to die, but he is not concerned about that. He wants to compete with those who work in gold, silver, and bronze, and make things like they do. He takes great pride in the things he makes, but they are counterfeit. His heart is made of ashes. His hope is cheaper than dirt. His life is not worth as much as his clay, because he never came to know the God who shaped him, who breathed into him an active soul and a living spirit. He thinks of human life as just a game, a market where he can make a profit. He believes that he must make money however he can, even by evil ways. This man who makes idols and fragile pots from the same clay knows better than anyone else that he is sinning. The punishment of the Egyptians. Verse 14. But the most foolish of all people, showing less sense than babies, were the enemies who oppressed your people, O God. They thought that all their pagan idols were gods, even though idols cannot see with their eyes, cannot breathe through their nose, cannot hear with their ears, cannot feel with their fingers, and cannot walk on their legs. Someone whose spirit is only borrowed made them. No one can ever make a god that is equal to a human being. Every person will sooner or later die, but anything he makes with his wicked hands is dead from the start. He himself is better than what he worships. Let me say that again. He himself is better than what he worships. He at least is alive, but what he worships is not, and never has been. Such people worship the most disgusting animals, including even the least intelligent ones. Even as animals, they are not attractive enough to make anyone want them. Even as animals, they are not attractive enough to make anyone want them. God himself passed them by when he put his approval and blessing on the rest of creation. Chapter 16. And so it was appropriate that these people were punished by such creatures, tormented by swarms of them. But you, O Lord, did not punish your people in this way. Instead, you showed them kindness. You sent them quails to eat, a rare, delicious food to satisfy their hunger. You did all of this so that the idolaters, when they were hungry, would be unable to eat because of the disgusting creatures sent to them. Your people, however, suffered hunger only a short while, and then they ate the finest food. It was necessary for the oppressors to suffer relentless need, while your people saw how their enemies were being tormented. When terrible, fierce snakes attacked your people and were killing them with their poison, you did not remain angry long enough to destroy your people. This trouble lasted only a little while as a warning. Then you gave them a healing symbol, the bronze snake, to remind them of what your law requires. To look at yourself, to look at your sickness in the eye, your pain in the eye. That was what the snake represented. You know, the snake was poisoning them, the snake was killing them. So he commanded Moses to create the snake to look, and the only way they could be healed was by looking into the bronze snake's eyes. They had to face their problem. You know what I'm saying? They had to face their problem to be healed. Then you gave them the healing symbol, the bronze snake, to remind them of what their law requires. If a person looked at that symbol, he was cured of the snake bite. Not by what he saw, but by you, the Savior of all mankind. By doing this, you also convinced our enemies that you are the one who rescues people from every evil. Our enemies died from the bites of locusts and flies. No one was found to cure them, because they deserve to be punished by such creatures. But even poisonous snakes cannot overcome your people, because you had mercy, helped them, and cured them. They were bitten so that they would remember your commands, but they were quickly rescued in order to keep them from forgetting you completely and depriving. They were bitten so that they would remember your commands, but they were quickly rescued in order to keep them from forgetting you completely and depriving themselves of your kindness. No medicine or ointment cured them. They were restored to health by your word, O Lord, the word which heals all humanity. You have the power over life and death. You can bring a person to the brink of death and back again. A wicked person may kill someone, but cannot bring the dead person back to life or rescue a soul imprisoned in the world of the dead. Disastrous storms hit Egypt, verse 15. No one can possibly escape from you. Look at those ungodly people. They refuse to recognize you as God, so you punish them with your great power. They were overtaken by terrible storms of rain and hail and were completely destroyed by fire. The most amazing thing was that the fire burned all the more fiercely in the water, which usually puts fire out. All the forces of nature fight to defend those who are righteous. At one point, the flames died down so that they wouldn't destroy the creatures sent to punish the ungodly. Those people had to learn that they were being overtaken by your judgment. But at another point, when surrounded by water, the flames burned more fiercely than fire had ever burned before, and so destroyed the crops on the land where those unrighteous people lived. Wow, the fire burnt more fiercely on water. On the water, it burnt more fiercely on the water. And then had the intelligence to die down to let what God commanded to destroy his enemies, that they didn't wipe them out. Is there a divine plan and order for things? We still see it today. If you don't see God at work today, what are you looking at? You don't see his movement now? You don't see things coming into alignment in the same way the destruction of these ancient nations, civilizations, how things are lining up the same exact way, how the same things he destroyed nations, destroyed these nations and these peoples. Today, this day and age, the nations are doing the same exact thing. Same exact things, falling into the same exact patterns. The Israelites received manna to eat, but this disaster did not strike your people. Verse 20. Instead, you gave them the food of angels. From heaven, you sent down bread that was ready to eat, and they did not have to prepare it. The food you gave delighted everyone, no matter the food you gave delighted everyone, no matter what his taste. All this showed how lovingly you care for your children. That food satisfied the desires of everyone who ate it. It was changed to suit every person's taste. It was changed to suit every person's taste. Wow. It was food that under normal circumstances would vanish away like snow or ice. But now it did not melt even in the fire. This was meant to teach your people that the same fire that was destroying their enemies' crops during the heavy downpour of rain in hell held back its power so that your own righteous people might have food. You created the universe. It is at your command. All creation uses its power to punish unrighteous people. That's what I was saying about the government, right? That God's people are the ones that have to take down these people. We have to come together to wipe out the evils in the world. The evils that are at play, that are in power. It is God's people that have to take up arms and fight against them. You created the universe. It is at your command. All creation uses its power to punish the unrighteous people, but it becomes mild and kind to those who put their trust in you. But it becomes mild and kind to those who put their trust in you. Creation assumed all kinds of forms to show how you provide generously for all who pray to you. Creation assumed all kinds of forms to show how you provide generously for all who pray to you. This happens so that the people whom you loved, O Lord, might learn that they are not fed by what they can grow. It is your word that maintains those who put their trust in you. The food that was not destroyed by the fire melted when the first ray of sunlight warmed it. This was to teach us that we must get up before daybreak to give you thanks and pray as the sun comes up. But an ungrateful person's hope will melt away like frost and drain away like water that is not being used. But an ungrateful person's hope will melt away like frost and drain away like water that is not being used. So if you don't have no gratitude and no thanks to your God, everything you have will be lost. Footnotes. Wisdom, chapter 16, verse 25. Pray to you or are in need. Or are in need. 17, chapter 17. Wisdom, the book of Solomon, the wisdom of Solomon. The Good News Translation, chapter 17, verse 1. Terror strikes the Egyptians at night. O Lord, your acts of judgment are marvelous and hard to explain. That is why people who had not been taught about them went astray. When lawless people imagine that they had your holy nation in their power, they were themselves imprisoned in a long night of darkness. They lay in their own houses, shut off from your eternal care. They thought that their sins had been secret and unnoticed, shielded from view by a dark curtain of forgetfulness. But now they were horribly afraid, confused, and terrified by ghostly forms. Not even the dark corners where they lay could protect them from fear. They were surrounded by horrible noises. Grim ghosts with gloomy faces appeared before their eyes. No fire had power to give them light, and the brilliant stars could do nothing to relieve the deathly darkness. There was only a dreadful fire, lit by no human hand, that shone on them, and in their terror, they believed that the real world was even worse than the things they imagined. The illusions produced by their magic tricks were put to shame, and all the wisdom they had boasted of came to nothing. They had claimed they could drive away all the fears and illnesses of sick minds, but now they themselves were sick with silly, groundless fears. Even though nothing dangerous had actually happened, they were terrified by hissing snakes and animals advancing on them. And so they died, shaken with fear, afraid even to open their eyes, yet unable to keep them shut. Wickedness is cowardly in itself and stands self-condemned. Someone with a guilty conscience will always imagine things to be worse than they really are. Fear is nothing but the failure to use the help that reason gives. Fear is nothing but the failure to use the help that reason gives. When you lack the confidence to rely on reason, you give in to the fears caused by ignorance. All night long, those people slept the same restless sleep, even though the night held no power over them, since it came from the powerless depths of the world of the dead. They were chased by hideous forms and lay paralyzed as they surrounded them to the sudden, unexpected fear that came over them. People would suddenly collapse and lie locked in the chains of their own fears. Farmers, shepherds, and laborers out in the countryside were captured by the same inevitable fate and bound in the darkness by the same invisible chain. They were panic-stricken by the sighing of the wind, or by the singing of birds in the trees, or by the roaring of rushing water, or by the rumble of falling rock, or by the sound of unseen creatures running about, or by the savage roaring of wild animals, or by the echoes from the mountains. In the full light of day, the rest of the world went about in business undisturbed. Only those people were covered by this heavy night, a foretaste of the darkness of death that was waiting for them. They were a burden to themselves that was even heavier than the darkness. Footnotes: Wisdom, chapter 17, verse 11. Wickedness, self-condemned, Greek, unclear. Chapter 18. Light shines on the Israelites, yet all the while a brilliant light was shining for your holy people. Their enemies heard their voices but couldn't see them. They envied the good fortune of your people who were not suffering. Those enemies could at least be thankful that the people that have those enemies could at least be thankful that the people they had wronged were not taking vengeance on them now, and so they begged them to leave. Then you guided your people as they traveled through a country they did not know. You guided them with a pillar of fire. It was like a sun that would not harm them on that glorious journey. But their enemies, who were not allowed to see the light, deserved to be prisoners in darkness, because they had made prisoners of your people. And it was through your people that the eternal light of the law was going to be given to the world. The death of the Egyptian firstborn. Verse 5. When your enemies were carrying out their resolve to kill the babies of your holy people, there was one child who was abandoned, but later rescued. Then you punished your enemies by killing a great number of their own children. You drowned their whole army at one time in the rushing waters. But our ancestors had been told in advance of what would happen that night, so that they would be cheered and encouraged by confident trust in your promises to them. Your people knew that you would rescue the righteous nation and destroy their enemies. With the same act, you punished our enemies and did the glorious honor of calling us to yourself. During all this time, devout people from this righteous nation were secretly offering sacrifices, giving their word to each other that they would keep God's law and share each other's blessings and dangers. Already, they were chanting those ancient hymns of praise, but their enemies' pitiful cries of grief echoed everywhere as they mourned for their dead children. Masters suffered the same punishment as their slaves. The king endured the same loss as the common people. There were too many dead bodies to count. There were not enough people left to bury them all. In a single moment, their dearest children died. All of them met death in the same way. These people had paid no attention to any warning, but relied instead on their magical powers. But when their firstborn sons were killed, then they recognized that Israel was God's son. The short night was half over, and all was quiet and peaceful, when suddenly your threats were carried out. An invincible word of judgment sped from your royal throne in heaven straight down to that doomed land. It came like a soldier in fierce attack, carrying out your firm command with a fearful weapon, standing with feet on the ground and head touching the sky, filling the land with death. At that moment, the people who were about to die had terrible nightmares and were seized by sudden fear. All over the land they lay half dead, and let it be known why they were dying. They knew why they were dying, because their horrible dreams had told them. Aaron's prayer saves the Israelites from death. Verse 20. Death also came to the righteous nation, for an epidemic struck many of them while they were in the desert. But your anger did not last. There was a certain blameless man who quickly took action to defend them. Acting as their priest, Aaron offered prayers and burned the incense used in asking forgiveness of sins. With prayers and incense as his weapons, he withstood your anger and ended the disaster. By doing this, he proved that he was your servant. He overcame the bitter difficulty, but not by his own strength or by military force. Instead, he used prayer to stop the punishment, appealing to the promises you solemnly gave to our ancestors. Dead bodies were already lying in piles, but he stepped in to hold your anger back and to keep it from harming those who were left alive. He wore a long robe decorated with symbols of the universe. In honor of our ancestors, he wore 4 rows of engraved stones on his chest. And your own majesty was represented by the ornament on his turban. The angel of death was afraid of these things and gave up. It was only a slight experience of your wrath, but it was enough. Footnotes. Wisdom 18, verse 2. Beg them to leave, or beg their forgiveness for their past hostility. Verse 22, probable text. Bitter difficulty. Greek crowd. The bitter crowd. Chapter 19. The suicidal stupidity of the Egyptians. But the godless continued to feel your pity. But the godless continued to feel your pitiless anger until the very end. You knew what they would do before they did it. You knew that even though they let your people go and made them leave quickly, they would change their minds and pursue them. While the Egyptians were still mourning at the graves of their dead, they forgot why all this had happened, and they foolishly decided that the people they had begged to leave were runaways. So they chased after them. They were led into this as part of the punishment they deserved, so that they would suffer the rest of the torments they were due to receive. They were to meet a strange death while your people continued on their miraculous journey. God guides and protects his people. Verse 6. The whole nature of the universe was changed at your command so that your people would not be harmed. They saw the cloud over their camp and dry land where water had been. There was a grass-covered plain between the stormy waves of the Red Sea, making it easy for them to cross over. All your people under your protection saw this miracle and went across. They pranced about like horses led out to pasture. They skipped about like lambs and praised you, Lord, for saving them. They still remember what life had been like when they were slaves, how the earth bred gnats instead of cattle, how the river produced huge numbers of frogs instead of fish. Later, when they desperately wanted better food, quails came up from the sea to satisfy their hunger. The quail was a bird they had never seen before, and it came out of the sea. The punishment of the Egyptians. But violent thunder gave warning of the punishment that was coming on those sinners. They suffered a well-deserved punishment for their great wickedness. No nation had ever hated strangers so bitterly. Other people had been known to refuse welcome to strangers who came to them, but these people made slaves of those who were their guests and who had shown them kindness. Every nation will be punished if it does not welcome foreigners, but these people, who had earlier welcomed the foreigners with happy celebrations and treated them as equals, later made them suffer cruelly. These people were also struck with blindness, like the men of Sodom, who came to the door of that righteous man Lot. They found themselves in total darkness as each one groped around to find his own door. They found themselves in total darkness as each one groped around to find his own door. God's miraculous power, verse 18. On a harp, each string keeps its own pitch, but each sound can be combined with others to make different melodies. This is how it was in those days, when the very elements entered into new combinations. Look at what happened. Land animals took to the water, and swimming creatures came up on the land. Fire burned even in water, which could not put it out, and yet the flames could not burn the flesh of the perishable creatures walking in them, and did not melt the heavenly food that would ordinarily and yet the flames could not burn the flesh of the perishable creatures walking in them, and did not melt the heavenly food that would ordinarily have melted like frost. Lord, you have made your people great, glorious in all respects. You have never neglected them. You have given them help, always, everywhere. And that is the Book of Wisdom, or the Book of the Wisdom of Solomon. The Good News Translation. And that Solomon's recount of what happened in Egypt. And this is many, many years before his time. Why would he find it necessary to recount, that story? And they call it wisdom. Something to think about, right? Of all the things that he could have spoke about, and all the things he could have used as analogies to define wisdom, he used the destruction of Egypt, their practices, their behaviors, the mindset. But he also showed you that is all God's will. Their mistreatment, they served a purpose. That everything is by God's design and order. Everything that we are experiencing in this life is God's design. Right? To show his glory, his power, his love, and his mercies towards his people. And his people are not just Israel. Or the Jews, the Israelites, were not only his people. They were not the only people that he chose to protect. And it was not by flesh and blood that he called him his people. He called him his people because of their faith in him. It is their faith. It is your faith that makes you an Israelite, a Jew, God's child, a child of God, God's children. kingdom citizens. It is your faith. It is the faith of Abraham that made nations, not just his descendants. What brings you into the fold, into union with God, is your faith. What makes you a child of God is your faith. Has nothing to do with your bloodline or your lineage. Nothing. Nothing at all. Nothing. But it is your faith. Your belief in him. Your trust in him. Your knowing of him. Your acknowledgement of him. That's what makes you an Israelite, a Jew, a child of God. Your faith. Remember Abraham, how the Pharisees of that day, and they were trying to condemn Jesus and trying to catch him in lies, and said, we are the children of Abraham. And Jesus said to them, you're not Abraham's children, because if you were Abraham's children, then you would believe in me and the one who sent me. So it's not of descendants, of bloodline. It is of faith. So remember that. Doesn't matter what part of the country you're in, what part of the world you're in. It is your faith that makes you God's child. Walk in that. That's your true identity. Not black, not white, not Egyptian, not Israeli, not Palestinian, not Ethiopian, not African, or Zimbabwean, whatever. German, Polish, Irish, Russian. His children are those that are faithful, that have faith in his faithfulness, faith in his faith, in his word, his sovereignty, his holiness. So get beyond race, get beyond blood. We can only worship God in spirit and in truth. So you can put on whatever facade you want. God knows. He knows the truth. He knows your heart. He knows your thoughts. He knows your intentions and your motives. So, that's the book of wisdom, the book of Solomon, wisdom, Good News Translation, 19 chapters. I don't know. I guess I'll do Baruch. That's another one that's like, like the Proverbs and like Sirach and like the book of wisdom. It's another good one. It has a lot of daily living principles in it. So I'll share that with you guys. That's about it. I'll leave you with the question that I will always leave you with. Where is the love? Especially between the woman and the man. Where is it? How about where is the love between man and God? Once that is fixed, then the love between the man and the woman can be healed, restored. So is that connection, the disconnect between man and God, that we have the disconnect between the man and the woman. It's very, very simple. It's a divine order. I keep telling y'all. There's rules to this. I ain't even gonna say it. But y'all know. There's rules to this. SH. You know what I'm saying? It is. It really is. It's principles. So, you want to change the world? Heal yourself. Find yourself. Reconnect with your Creator. Come into alignment and union with Him. As individuals, and then collectively we can do it. We can do it. But it starts with one first. So what are you willing to do to fix it? To establish it? Love. What are you willing to do? Shalom. Peace, 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 peace.